Today, we're going to run through exactly how to execute leg extensions. This is one movement that pretty much everyone has in their leg training, and there's so much we can get out of the right setup, the right execution, and understanding what we're trying to target in these muscles. So firstly then, let's look through the leg quad musculature. So we have three main muscles here that we're looking at. So we have the vastus lateralis, which is the outer sweep. We have the VMO, or the vastus medialis muscle, which is the teardrop. And then we have the rectus femoris muscle, which is this big long one that attaches all the way to the hip. So most of us struggle to develop the outside sweep. We typically have a overdeveloped VMO, and the rectus femoris is one of those ones that looks really cool when it's really big. These are all targeted in a leg extension, which makes it such a great movement. So what do these muscles do? So to really keep it basic and nice and simple for everyone, in a leg extension, the outside sweep is the most engaged when your knee is most bent. So getting into those deep portions of the leg extension really help you bring this up. When you're getting into the squeeze of the muscle in the leg extension, the VMO is kicked in. Now, where does the rectus femoris come into this? So you can see that this attaches all the way up here in the hip and actually attaches through the patella down below the knee. Now, why is this important? So when you're doing a squat, you have the hip here, you have the knee here, and they stay a very kind of similar distance apart. So what we're trying to do when we're trying to grow a muscle is we're trying to lengthen and shorten it. Now, as the hip lengthens, the knee shortens it. So when you're coming down, the hip then extends, the knee it extends slightly, but not very much. As we go up, it then shortens again. This is a very, very big muscle, as you can see here. So yes, it works more isometrically in like a squat or a leg press. But in a leg extension, this hip position stays nice and fixed. So we're moving through the knee, which then gives this rectus femoris a chance to really come into its own. So this is why range of motion in leg extension and alignment is super important, which we'll run through just now. So firstly then, as this plays through, we're going to talk about setting the machine up in the first place. So if we have a look here, you can see that there is a pivot. Now, this is where your knees need to be in line with. Now, there is a reason for this. Most of the time, you're setting up a machine to accommodate for you. Whereas with a single pivot movement, where it's a single joint movement, i.e. only your knee is moving, aligning the pivot with the knee will take tension off of the knee joint and onto the target muscles. If it's too far forward or too far back, your body is then fighting to try and align itself with the pivot, and you'll find that you'll have a disadvantage in the movement because it's crying out for stability. So you can see here that I've set the seat back quite far. I'm quite a tall person, so actually on the prime leg extension, it's quite easy for me to set up because I have the seat as far back as I possibly can. Now, where is the knee pad? The knee pad here is above my ankle. Now, lots of people set it up where it's directly on their ankle. And what this does is, if you think about the joint, the distance between the pad and the joint, the further away it is, the more tensions there is going to be on there. But it's not actually going to take away from the quad muscle. So what we want to do is we want to bring it up far enough that it's kind of low to mid shin, so that it's still far enough away that as we extend, because this will slightly slide down your feet, that it comes towards your feet. But in the full stretch, it still needs to be slightly up your leg as well. So this will take a little bit of playing around with to get it set up. Now you notice I put my hands between my thighs there. Now what this is aligning the joints. So we spoke about the pivot first. Now the pivot only goes in one direction, and so do your knees. Now what lots of people do is they'll have their feet out. Excuse me, that's my phone going off. I will just turn that off. What they'll have is their knees pointing out to the side. Now this pivot turns only in one direction, and as I said, so do your knees. So we want to mimic that pivot with the knee joint. Now for me, this is a good little tip. Putting your hands in two little fists like that and squeezing them together between your thighs or your knees will then bring alignment between the hip, the knee, and the ankle. So you notice I do this a couple of times. I'm there, I set up myself in position, just make sure, and you can see the turn in of the legs. Now I'm set up, I'm pulling myself into the pad, I've got my core braced, and my feet are going in a straight line as well. I actually turn my feet in ever so slightly because I have a tendency to flare them out. So in the stretch position, I will be here, and then as I go into the full extension, that comes to there. That's just something that you have to play around with over time, and it's something that I found has been very, very beneficial for me. I want to interrupt this video just to talk to you about supplements. As a competitive bodybuilder, my performance, my recovery, and my health are all super important in my life. This is why I have been using Train by JP supplements for the last 5 years now. They cover everything from your pre, intra, and post-workout nutrition. They also offer health and joint supplementation. They also offer a nice stack and save option, which means that you don't have to think about which individual products you need. They're all there in a bundle package for you with a discount. If you click the link in the description below and use the code GPS10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% off your order. Now back to the video. Let's now talk about execution. So firstly, you can see that I'm pulling myself into the seat. What this is doing is keeping my lower back and my glutes into the pad and into the seat. We want to create as much range through the knee joint here. It's going to be different for everyone. I've been doing this a long time, so I can create a lot more distance without having any knee pain. Now, if you experience some knee pain, maybe cut this a little bit short, but I'm going to assume for this video's purpose that no one has any problems with knee pain. So getting this as far back, setting the shin pad as far back as you possibly can is going to be more beneficial, as we spoke about earlier, for the outside of the quad, which is here. So this is going to create a deeper stretch, start the movement with this. The rectus femoris is going to help. And then as we get into the squeeze, this bad boy is going to work. So what am I thinking about when I start the movement? Getting a brace on, and then what I'm doing, pulling myself in, and instead of kicking up, I'm focusing on how far away can I get my feet. There's a mirror over there. So I'm focusing on driving my feet out and dragging round. Now this is also something where people go wrong, is they'll just kick up. Now this, as we spoke about, this is a pivot joint. When we are down in this stretch position, our feet are hanging below. Now, if we think about kicking out and away, as you can see here, there is a good amount of control on the way down, and it's stretching. And now I'm kicking out and away, and what that's doing is taking tension off of the knee and onto the joint. You can see already my legs are shaking, and look, so in this stretch position, outside sweep is firing, rectus femoris is firing, and then it finishes off by getting that really, really short. So kicking away rather than up will be something that is very, very beneficial for you. Something I also want to touch on is loading. Now you can see I'm using quite a bit of load here. You know, I've got 105 kilos, I think is here, and it's loaded differently because of the prime stuff. You can see that in previous videos about the resistance profiles and why I do that. But what I will say is, you notice my hands here, I'm yanking in as far as I can, and I actually have to adjust in a second because I can feel my hands slipping. Look, I'm trying to pull that brace back in. What I will do in the future, and what I usually do, I don't know why I didn't in this set, is actually use my straps to pull myself in. And the reason for this is you want to keep your glutes and hamstrings jammed into that pad and pulled down. As soon as you start, what will happen is as soon as your grip goes, your hips will come up because your quads don't want to do as much of the work. So you'll limit the range of motion by lifting your legs up, or your hips up, sorry, because the knee doesn't bend as far. So a cue that actually you might be able to get some benefit out of is thinking about getting your heels to your glutes in that stretch position, and that will allow you to create as much knee flexion as possible. Finally then, let's talk about tempo, rep ranges, and all of that other technical stuff to kind of program it wonderfully into your leg training. So this wouldn't be something that I would put at the very beginning of the workout. You can see the hamstring curl behind me there. That is something that I would lead with. What you're doing is the shearing force on the knee is coming. You're in this movement. Sorry, let me explain that slightly better. In this movement, the most force on the knee is in the squeeze, and that is where the machine is also heaviest, excluding the prime. But typically with any pin loaded machine or regular machine where it's only got one loading point, there's a lot of tension on the knee. Now in the hamstring curl, it's the reverse. So it's actually the most tension on the knee is in the stretch position, and there's not very much in the squeeze position, and there's not very much in the stretch position. So it's a good way to warm up your knees. So I would put this after some form of hamstring curl, but I also like to put it before a hack squat or a leg press. Now the reason for this is now our legs are warm, we've got all of the muscles firing, and we're now able to go into the hack squat or the leg press and not have to use as much load to get the same benefit. And as I say, they're already on. You know what's working, you know that they're full of blood. There's an element of safety and not wrecking yourself. Now, if I was to try and do this with the same accuracy after I'm cooked from a leg press or a hack squat or even both, I'm going to come in with a different maybe mindset, and I think that's important. Now, I do like to run leg extensions slightly higher reps, so the lowest I will go is an 8 to 12. I think a 6 to 10 is a little bit on the lower end. Maybe if you're doing really, really controlled tempo reps, counting seconds on the way down, holding for a squeeze, counting seconds on the way up, that could be a way to go. But overall, with the tempo that I use, so it's a very, very controlled negative, taking a second in the stretch, driving up as hard as I can. We've just finally found the last rep. So in the stretch position, taking a pause, driving up, squeezing the quads at the top, not spending too much time there, but getting back into that negative, really, really focusing on that stretch and engaging the muscles where I want them to be. So that would be how I would execute that. I hope this video was useful. Let me know how you get on in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and let me know again in the comments below what videos you'd like to see from me next. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.